You're listening to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell, and co-host Keelan Harvey on Alternative Talk AM 1150. Now, back to the show with local mortgage experts Tina Mitchell and Keelan Harvey.
Welcome back to The Money Hour with your host, Tina Mitchell.
And your co-host, Keelan Harvey.
Your local mortgage experts right here at 1150 AM KKNW, the Saturday, June 30th show. We are here to help you build a strong financial blueprint, 1 week and one show at a time. If you're hearing our show at a different time or day, you are listening to a rebroadcast, but we're here to answer any questions or connect you with the guests that we have on the show today. Please call the show at 1-855-400-1150. Again, that's 1-855-400-1150 or online at themoneyhour.com. In studio right now, Susan Ward with Windermere Real Estate, Yarrow Bay, choosing a great Realtor to result in a winning transaction. Susan, thank you so much for coming into studio first time.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
And a little bit about Susan. Susan Ward is with Windermere Real Estate East. She takes great care to educate and advise her clients with an informed and insightful assessment of their current real estate market. She's very astute, remarkable, miraculous, and extremely diligent in seeing that her clients' needs are thoroughly attended to, from their selection of their distinguished property to the review of the contractual components of the transaction, through to details to inspection and on to the final and important points at closing. Susan provides close personal attention and will work tirelessly to close your transaction. Her team is there to help you in every step of the way. If you're looking to buy or sell and want a great representation, you can call Susan at 425-999-7721, or you can always call into the show as well. Again, Susan, thank you so much.
So, Susan, we often hear people say it doesn't matter what agent you use, they're all the same. How do you respond to that?
Well, this is actually so far from the truth. Picking the wrong agent could be the number one reason your transaction is a horrible experience, or even worse, it's an unsuccessful transaction. So it's really easy to get stuck with a realtor who does not do much business or doesn't even have a great work ethic. So please don't be fooled, because you definitely get what you pay for. If you use a budget agent, you're certainly going to get budget results. This is your biggest purchase of your life, so you definitely want the best representation you can get.
Well, and I always talk about the 80-20 rule, and we know in sales, it doesn't matter what sales that you're in, 20% do 80% of the business, which means 80% do 20% of the business. And then you have your 1 percentile, the best of the best. And that's really what the show is all about, is bringing in the best experts. So, Susan, what makes a good real estate agent stand out from another?
Well, first of all, number one, are they a full-time real estate agent? Unfortunately, becoming a real estate agent is a fairly easy task. I hate to say it, but you take a test and you pass the exam and you've made it. You know, that's great. I even went to a restaurant one night. The valet heard me talking about real estate, and he chimed in, I'm a real estate agent. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's the scariest thing that I could ever hear. And it's part of why everybody thinks our industry looks so bad. Because if you're going to hire this person to represent you for the biggest investment of your life, I guarantee you're going to be disappointed. At best, you're going to be disappointed, but at worst, it could cost you a lot of money. The second thing is experience. A very good agent does many transactions, which means they know contracts in and out, as you said in the introduction. The contract makes the transaction. So you'll likely have a solid team when you work with someone who does many transactions. Which will, as a unit, make your experience as wonderful as possible. So.
Well, Susan, obviously you don't want a part-timer, and there's a lot of them out there. You want somebody that really does it for a living, has a passion, and really cares about it.
Yeah,
it's their profession
absolutely.
As a whole. In your opinion, what is a normal number of transaction a full-time agent may do per year?
Well, every transaction or every agent is so drastically different. So it's really hard to say what each number could be. But as Tina said at the beginning, something you should remember is the 80-20 rule. So 80% of all the transactions in the state of Washington are literally done by 20% of the people. This is such an incredible statistic. So having these figures in your mind, there's no wonder why there's so much dissatisfaction from real estate consumers.
Yeah, and I saw a stat, it was quite a few years ago, but a good agent, one that is doing a good book of business is closing like 8 transactions a year. That is, so I mean, but then you've got your high, the ones that are doing massive volume. But if you think about it, and some, I mean, they might be closing a transaction a year. And if you think about all that it takes and all of the experience that you need, you've got to really get in there and be doing a lot of business. And Susan, I know that you do a crazy amount of deals, much more than 8 a year. But that's kind of your average agent on the higher end.
Yeah.
So you'd mentioned earlier a couple things that consumers should look for in a great agent. Are there any other things that people need to watch for?
Funnily enough, great communication. I know that people are probably sitting there thinking, well, isn't that what their job is? But honestly, there's a lot of real estate agents that have terrible communication skills. Do you find when you're calling your real estate agent that they never answer the phone, or worse, they're responding to your phone calls with text messages?
Yeah.
And then you try to respond to them again and they text you again and they text you again. I mean, this is going to make your transaction very frustrating when you're dealing with agents that are too busy to actually take their call, or they're trying to act like they're too busy. And literally there's so many agents out there that do this because they think if they're busy, it's going to make them look better. This is very frustrating. So at that point, I would definitely reassess your choice immediately. If they're not going to communicate with you efficiently, they're probably not going to communicate with the agents when you're trying to buy or sell your homes. So, of course, a busy and successful agent can't always answer the phone, of course. But, for me as a busy agent, I always return calls on a timely manner. If I'm in a meeting, I'll send you a quick text and say, hey, I'll call you right away. And guess what? Guess who calls you back? I always call back. You have to. The other thing that you need to watch for is in presenting an offer and the negotiation. I'm constantly hearing about people who right now are so nervous to get into the market. They have friends who have written 10 offers and they're just not winning. So this is the most frustrating thing for me to hear, because quite honestly, the reason that offers are being written and turned down is there is a lack of communication from the agent to the list agents. You've got to communicate. I can't even remember a time where I've had to write more than a couple offers before getting a client into a home. So I'm telling you, if you've written 10 offers, it's definitely time to interview a new agent.
And a lot of that too with the communication, it's how you're able to communicate with your client to let them know what they need to do to be successful, and that's really leading as an expert.
Absolutely.
So Susan, you're saying that not every agent knows how to write a good offer. There's more than just filling out a contract and sending it off. Isn't that the case?
Well, absolutely not. Funnily enough, just like I just touched on, I never write an offer until I have contacted the list agent and asked some critical questions. Not every person selling a house has the same goals. So if we don't communicate with the list agent, how are we going to know how best to write an offer? So the critical questions must be answered. My goal in that phone call is to determine what the sellers want out of the transaction. And this might even be beyond the dollar amount. Not always, of course, but there's often things that people need in order to make a transaction work for them. So in addition, a list agent always appreciates a buyer's agent who's willing to go the extra mile for them. I mean, this makes their job easy throughout the transaction. So list agents really find that communication important because they can see they're going to be working with an agent that has great communication. There's that word, communication.
Yeah.
It's so key. They don't want to work with an agent who's not going to participate in the transaction.
And I want to go back to as well with the importance of the number of transactions that you're actually closing, because as agents, you can see that data with each other. And so when you're working with an agent that is full-time and doing business versus not, and that's going to make a difference in that deal possibly coming together if price is equal, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what else can somebody do to make sure that they're finding not just a great agent, but one of the best agents?
Well, they definitely have to interview the agents. I mean, that's so critical. And definitely look for someone who's been selling real estate, multiple transactions. They can ask how many agents or how many transactions they've done in a year. I mean, experience is so important. They need to, determine, ask for referrals. Ask for 3 recent referrals. And I'm not talking about Yelp.
Yeah.
Anyone can create a fake review. Yelp, I get that often. Well, I read reviews. Ask for your last 3 clients and call them and see how they did for them. Ask how many homes they sold last year as a buyer's agent. If this is a buyer's agent interview, ask how many homes they personally sold, not their team.
Yeah.
Remember, the team, sometimes people lump deals together, transactions together as a team. So someone might say, well, I did 60 transactions last year. In actual fact, they only did 2 because they just got their license.
Yes.
Or that's all they've done, that's all they do in a year. And then the last thing is, a great question for either a buyer's agent or a list agent, do they have a personal assistant or an administrator that helps with the transaction? Busy agents, the agents that you want to use, I'm telling you, they have a hard time doing everything on their own. So a great agent has someone who's working as a team between, the whole transaction. So it helps you, it helps me, it helps the transaction go smoothly.
Susan, let's talk about listing a home for a moment. What steps do you take to prevent a transaction from failing, speaking of successfully listing a home?
So you definitely want to make sure that, of course, we can't control everything that comes up. So we would love to be able to do that, but that doesn't happen. But what I do to cover all my bases and to protect my client is when offers come in, the first thing we do is we want to check with the lenders to check that the buyer is fully qualified and to make sure that the proof of the pre-approval letter is actually a legitimate one.
Yes.
Believe it or not, fake ones do exist. It is crazy. Under no circumstances should an agent ever, accept an offer with a pre-qualification. You need a pre-approval letter. And there's a big difference. A pre-qualification tells you very little about the buyer's actual ability to get a loan.
Yes.
So if they're offering to put money above appraisal, do they have the proof of funds? A lot of agents, they'll tell their clients, oh, look at this, they're willing to go above appraisal. But have they really got proof that they can do that?
Sure.
You'd better make sure that all your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. So you definitely want to have someone who's fully involved in the transaction. Something that I do is I always attend the appraisal.
Which is brilliant.
Yeah, because the deal can go south on an appraisal all the time.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm trying to manipulate anything, but we want to make sure that they are fully aware of all the amazing things that you've done to the home.
Yeah.
If they walk in and don't understand that all these things have been done, how can they properly appraise the situation?
Well, and I always say, too, with an appraisal, the appraiser, they've got to do a lot of work. And you've already done that work as a buyer agent and representing the seller. You've done all of that work, gathered all the data. So why not have that information that you can share as a common courteous to the appraiser?
Absolutely.
Here's the data that I've collected for this.
Absolutely.
So, Susan, if someone were hiring you to buy or sell their property or to help them buy or sell their property, what can they expect from you?
So initially, when I first meet with my clients at the first interview, I always want to go over the purchase and sale agreement. It's absolutely crazy to me how many people are out there looking at homes, shopping houses, and they have no idea what they're signing.
Yeah.
I think it's so important for buyers to know what they're signing. Crazy me. But I always go over the purchase and sale agreement first thing. I also want to discuss the market. I want to let them know what's going on in the area. I want to explain that the price that's listed isn't always what the true market value of that house is. It might be that it's priced below market, and that's an incentive for them to get multiple offers. So, I always like to advise my clients, and so they're informed, and give them an insightful assessment of what is going on in the current market. My clients do find that I do provide close personal attention, and as you said, I do work tirelessly for every one of my clients to make sure they have a successful and enjoyable transaction.
Yes, you definitely do.
Well, Susan, it's been a crazy market, and many scenarios where you get multiple offers, so it's tough for a buyer to stand out. How do you help your buyer stand out?
You know what? I want to make sure that my lender calls the list agent. That's number one. I always have them call the list agent, and that makes them stand out because the agent, that's one less thing for the agent to do. The next thing is I make sure that the offer is clear and clean. I make sure the paperwork is in order. I make sure the pre-approvals are attached. I make sure the proof of funds are attached. When a list agent gets my client's offer, it is clear on what my client is providing. I also make a call to the list agent, as you know. I introduce myself and I make sure that I'm writing an offer that is going to be attractive to my clients.
Well, and I'll tell our listeners that your success, to all of the listeners, is in your realtor's details.
Yes.
So, Susan, thank you so much for coming into studio and joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Coming up next in the Money Hour, are you ready to be an entrepreneur? Karen Coring with Edward Jones right here at 1150 AM KKNW after this short break.